Helen Varey. Big hand of applause, please.
People keep asking me if I want a microphone, and I'm a really big loud voice, so I'm going to be fine. Okay, so we're going to talk about goal mapping, and I'll explain to you a little bit about the process as we go on in the next 40 to 45 minutes. I'll also share with you a personal story. I don't always like sharing personal stories, to be perfectly honest with you, because I think for you in the audience it gets a bit boring when you're listening to somebody else's, whatever they've done in their life. But the only reason that I do it is because in my experience, when I'm coaching or mentoring or working with people, they'll say, do you know what, when you said that, it meant something to me. Or, you've experienced that too? That's just the same as me. And that's the only reason I do it, is I believe that we all share very similar stories as we go on through life. So maybe there's something that I've experienced that you'll also resonate with. But goal mapping is a self-actualization program. That's what it says in the notes. Actually, what it means is to give you some clarity as to your highest good, what your best intentions are in life. When I share this with various different groups of people, the feedback that I get is that it's common sense. So the material is common sense. And it is common sense, but I find it's not always common practice. Do you ever find that that something is, no-brainer, but actually it's really common, it's common practice, or it's common sense. The feedback that I also get is that the truths in the material are universal. In other words, it can be learnt by everybody, and it can be shared by everybody. So it doesn't make any difference if I'm sharing this information with a group of, I don't know, chief executive officers, as sometimes I do, or whether I'm sharing it with the mailroom staff, as sometimes I do. In other words, it doesn't matter where you are in life, you don't have to have any degrees or any NLP training or anything like that. You'll understand this material, it can be shared by everybody. The whole process, though, was created by the guy whose name appears on the slides, a guy called Brian Main. And he now travels the world teaching this program to places of education, schools, universities, that type of thing. He teaches it in corporate life, and he's helped in doing so by a few hundred coaching mentors who work with the goal mapping program, of which I'm one of them, amongst other things. He gets to travel the world, and I don't get that. Okay. So he shares it with a lot of different kinds of groups. But ultimately, the purpose of goal mapping is to give you some insight into your highest intentions, to give you a bit of clarification about what your beliefs really are. Maybe even to get you to hang on to some truths, maybe some things that you did years back that you've stopped doing and you've realised now that you should have continued doing them and all that sort of stuff. That really is the ultimate purpose of goal mapping. Sound interesting? Yeah. That's the bit where you say yes. Yes. Fantastic, okay. Because if you're going to step out and achieve goals that Jimmy was talking about earlier, you're going to have to change. Would you agree? Yeah. If you're going to achieve goals, you've got to change. And I turned 50 this year. I know I don't look at it. But I turned 50 this year, and I don't know where the 50 years has gone. Can you resonate with that? I don't know what happened in the last 50 years. Well, I know what happened in the last 50 years, but the time has gone so fast that I wish I knew back then what I've learned now, just about achieving goals. And I read somewhere just recently that when a young person now is leaving school or full-time education, they're going to experience about a dozen different jobs in any 20-year period. It wasn't like that when I left school. I don't know about you, but when my parents left school, and their parents before them, you had a job for life. You worked down the mine, or you were a housewife, or you worked in a shop, but you had a job for life. And I read somewhere else that the work employee of the future doesn't get paid a salary. They're going to be reimbursed for the value they contribute to the company they're working with. What's that all about? So I don't recognize the world, really, that we're working in. The way that we do things is so very different these days, don't you find? They reckon the world has changed so much in the last 50 years, more than at any other time in recorded history. The way that we shop. I mean, I go into Tesco's is a nightmare. You know, I'm trying to do it online, and I don't know what I'm going to get. The way that we entertain ourselves, the way that we interact with each other. I remember when somebody said, you're going to send an email, and I said, what's that? But nowadays, I've got a 3-year-old niece, and she's got her own email address. I don't understand the world that we're living in. But if you want to change, then we need to start to incorporate what that change will mean for us. Do you get that idea? The world is changing faster now than at any other time in recorded history. Okay? I remember years ago, as a child, Mum and Dad would take me to the seaside. And we'd walk along the cliffs. You get the ocean underneath you and all that sort of thing. And I didn't like the calm ocean. What I liked was the rough stuff. Those mountainous seas. And I was reading a book just recently, the autobiography of Helen Varey. Has anybody read it? If you haven't read it, it's one of the few books that brought me to tears, seriously. And in her book, she talked about these mountainous seas that I remember seeing as a child. And what she said in her book was that she had to ride this storm of change. Yeah? She couldn't just sit back. She had to utilize the power of a wind of change. And I began to think about change very differently a few years ago. And I began to see it too a little bit like a wind of change. It's neither good nor bad. It just is. And with every wind of change, it brings with it opportunities, and it'll bring with it difficulties, and often in equal amounts. Do you find that when there's a change in your life, when you're making a goal, you'll get the good stuff, and then you've got to deal with the not so good stuff. And I found particularly when there was a wind of change blowing, that sometimes people will run and hide away, particularly in business. There's a change in the business and everyone disappears and hides and sticks their heads in the sand and all that sort of thing. And then you get people who actually embrace change. They like it when there's change. They see change as an opportunity to progress, to make some changes themselves. They see it almost like a seed, that when there's this wind blowing that's carrying with it seed, it will flourish and it will grow. Do you get that idea? So you can decide when you're making changes to achieve goals, whether you're going to just stick your head in the sand and hope that the wind will just blow over, or whether you're going to seize that wind of change, seize that opportunity. And Ellen MacArthur really moved me when she talked about this wind of change, about this mountainous sea. And all she had to do, as the slide shows, is set a better sail and steer a sharper course to get to the destination that she'd got in mind. And the destination that could have been a harbour someplace, or it could have been the end of the competition. But she recognised that she had to steer a sharper course and ride this wind of change. So this is the first lesson, if you like, in goal mapping, that if you want to achieve a goal, you must be prepared to embrace the change. And we'll just flick through those key points about this wind of change. Okay? Now what I've selected for you this evening are a handful of what I think will be the most useful slides for you to have this evening, which lines up very nicely with what Jamina was talking about in goal achievement. The whole program is much bigger. Okay? There's a whole full-day workshop and there's a half-day workshop, and I will share with you at the very end, if you're interested, in how you find out some more information about the goal mapping process. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Good so far?
Yeah.
Okay. Who's made big changes in their life in the last few years? 50% of the room? Yeah? 50%, 20%, something like that. Okay. I've had to make some changes myself. And the biggest change I made was back in 2009, when I become, I don't know what the word is really, but I kind of disregarded some very obvious critical health risks that I was undergoing at the time. You see, I like food. Now, I know you wouldn't have guessed it. Yeah? This lady is going, that's food. I told you people would line up with my story. I really, you know, I could eat for England. I've got a very healthy appetite, thanks to my parents, because we couldn't leave a plate with food on it, so I'll blame them. I've got my belief system, Jimmy, and it's there. Right, I'm sticking with that. But I've got a very healthy appetite. But unfortunately, in 2009, that very healthy appetite and the fact that I can't run for a bus kind of made me very, very, very unhealthy. To the point where I'd have hot sweats at night. I couldn't breathe too well. I got a lot of skin pressure around here and it would press back on my throat when I lay in my bed at night. And I could snore for England. There's a name for that, it's called sleep apnea. Okay, I used to suffer from that. And actually what was indicative of the condition wasn't the noise, it wasn't the snoring, it was the silence. Because in the silence, I'd stop breathing. And I would need to be woken up a few times to bring myself back into consciousness. But did I do anything about it? No. Because that's what I'm like, you know, it wasn't a big enough crisis. I found when I was working that my health began to suffer too, because I sat down a lot. And when I was sitting down with a healthy appetite, of course you just start to eat, and the more I ate, the more I kind of had to sit down. And I had one of those lovely bosses who used to reward me with more work. Okay? So he didn't bring me a nice bunch of flowers or chocolates, which would have been really great. He used to say, you're doing really well, so I'm going to give you more responsibility and more work. And of course that brought with it more pressure. You know the idea? I hope I've only got any bosses in the room that you think about when you're rewarding your staff, you might consider not giving them any more work when they're doing really well. But that's what he did. He gave me lots more work to do, and of course the more work I had, the more I sat down, the more pressure I had, the more pressure you get, the more I ate, and so on and so on and so on. Until it got to the point where I couldn't fit in the shower cubicle. It's hard to imagine, but if I squeezed my frame into the cubicle and the water came cascading down, it just didn't reach the parts of my body that needed to be cleansed. So as a result, I used to smell. You don't need to move back, sir. I used to smell a little bit, and my skin became sort of quite cracked and quite sore. And it used to open up, and all those horrible, nasty things used to happen. My lower half of my body was mainly purple and blue and those sorts of colours, because the blood just wasn't pumping up and down. So I had really bad circulation. And I just disregarded all of this. And maybe there's the same for you. Maybe you've got changes that you need to make that are so obvious, they're right in your face, but it's so easy just to disregard stuff. And I tried everything. You name the diet, I've been on it. I've even invented my own diets. Okay? I've done hypnotists, I've done psychotherapists, I've done psychiatrists, you name it, I've done the whole lot. I've read every book, I think, on diets. I might even have written 2 of them myself. But for somehow or other, I just couldn't get to that stage where I was going to make those changes. And just to give you an example of how large I was, these were the summer shorts that I wore back then. Okay? One of these days I'm going to open these and I'll still get in them to see what I eat now. But these were the summer shorts of 2009. That's just to give you an idea of how bad things had got. Couldn't walk 100 yards, couldn't get up and down stairs, couldn't wipe my own backside, couldn't have a shower, couldn't fasten a car seat belt. I even wrote to Vauxhall complaining the seat belts were too small, you know, and that was really how bad the situation was. So there was a real reason to set some goals. And then one day somebody said to me, you need to go and see a hypnotist. And I thought, oh, here we go. I've been and done it before. But I went down to see a lady in London, Harley Street practice. I was told to take my checkbook, and it was just as well. And I was expecting this. I don't relax, look into my eyes, take a deep breath in and out, and all of this. You know, I was expecting all of that. Didn't get any of it. We had a talk. And at the end of the talk, she said, you are completely responsible for every act that you take in your life. The only freedom that you have got is the freedom of choice. You can choose how you want to be. And I'm thinking, that's cost me another £100. Keep on looking. And then she went on to tell me about the power of why. When the why is big enough, the how becomes easy. In other words, when your reason for doing something is big enough, you find a way. And I'm thinking, £100, come on. You know. And with those two gems of advice, I got back on the train, came back to Manchester where I live, feeling a bit cheated, you know, where's my hypnotherapy, you know, and relax, move down to your body, you know, through your toes. Any of that. So I carried on doing the two things that I do really well. And I know there are people in the room now that do it as well. The two things that I do well, one of them is eat, and the other one is work. And I can do a lot of both. So I carried on doing those two things, eating and working. And guess what happened? The more I ate, the more I worked, the more I sat down, I went back into that spiral that Jimmy was talking about earlier. Do you remember? He mentioned this downward spiral. And I just started to go down and down and down. My weight escalated to, I think it was more than 30 stones. I can't be certain, because I couldn't get on the damn weighing scales. I used to have 2 in a plank, hop between the two. But I didn't know how much I weighed. But I was going down and down and down into that downward spiral. Until one Sunday morning. There was a program on television. The Great British Gas Swim Series. Did anyone see it? Shame on you! Channel 4. And I was watching people do these swimming events throughout the United Kingdom at various locations. People, young, old, they got in the water and they swam a short distance. And they got out and got a medal. Now I can't run. I know you NLP people are going to say, no, say can't. I choose not to run. I choose not to go to the gym. But there is one thing that I was taught at a very young age, and that was how to swim. Not very well, but I could swim. And I saw these people doing something, and I felt, I can do that. That's your goal-setting moment, ladies and gentlemen, when you see somebody else doing something or behaving in a way, and you feel, and I don't just mean going, yeah, I can do that. You feel, I can do that. So I Googled it, thinking, no, you're going to have to be an Olympic athlete to do this. I Googled it, and I found that actually there was only a few things. I think it was 3 things that you had to be able to do. One of them was swim. Okay? But you had to be able to swim for at least 1 mile. You had to be able to swim for 1 mile in open water. Do we have any open water swimmers? Yo! Others. Fantastic. Because you guys will know exactly where I'm coming from. You have to be able to swim in cold water. It's damn cold, isn't it, gentlemen? Thank you. Not for me. And you had to be able to wear a wetsuit. And I couldn't do that either because I didn't have a wetsuit, and I couldn't buy a wetsuit because at my size you cannot buy wetsuits for pay. So even though there was a goal that I fancied, straight away there was some massive obstacles in my way. And I bet you find that when you get goals. The moment you set the goal, you find the damned obstacles. A second later, yeah, I want to do that. Oh, hang on, I've got to do this. And you can start listing the goals. But that day, ladies and gentlemen, that day, the wind of change was blowing. And I decided to set a better sail and steer a sharper course and take a little bit better care of myself to achieve the goal. And I signed up to swim a section of the River Thames in July 2010. Oh dear. I couldn't swim a length of the pool. But that was the plan. And I'm thinking, oh, crying out loud, what have I done now? I've got to start making some goals and writing things down and making a list of things I need to do. So I got my old pencil out. All right, okay. Goal number 1. get wet. Goal number 2, stay in for more than 5 minutes. Goal number 3, don't be afraid to show your bum in public. The open water swimmers will know what I'm talking about. So I set a plan out and started to make some goals. And a friend of mine, a really good friend, came up to me and she said, "That's really good, Helen, because you're using your left brain." You're using your left brain. You're thinking about this strategically and you're thinking about this logically. Well done. I thought, oh great, I'm going to achieve it. And then she said, wouldn't it be great if you were guaranteed success and you use the other bits of your brain? Now she lost me completely. But what on earth are you talking about? And she went on to explain this process of how there are different parts of your brain that have become known as left brain and right brain. They're not actually, left brain, right brain, and we'll divide it in the middle like a sponge cake. If it was, I'd eat it. But anyway, I do like my old bit of Victoria sponge. But anyway, so there you go, left brain and right brain. And what she explained to me was there are parts of your brain that are very strategic, they're logical, they're sort of fight or flight. They think in terms of strategies, really, and you make bullet points and you write things down, and I was good at that. And then she went on to explain that there's this other part, this lovely coloured area of your brain over here, which is the more creative side of you. It's the side of visualizations and imagination. It's also the gateway to the unconscious mind. And I'm thinking, unconscious what? Unconscious mind. When something is in your unconscious mind, you're on autopilot. In other words, you do it without thinking about it. Like breathing. How many people just go, oh, yeah. Oh, I'm breathing? Because somehow or other your body works itself without you consciously being aware of it. Yeah? So it's like I'm being on autopilot. When something is in your unconsciousness, you're on autopilot. And she said to me, wouldn't it be great, Helen, if you swimming in the River Thames was on autopilot, so you didn't have to worry about showing your bum in public, because you knew you were going to finish. They didn't have to fish you out or anything like that. And I thought, that's fantastic. Give me some of that. And then she went on to explain the process of how you make a goal map. And I'll show you first of all the process, and then I'll show you the goal map. Okay? There are 7 steps to goal mapping. You don't need to write them down, by the way, because I'm going to give you the website address at the end anyway. But if you want to, feel free. Okay? The first step is dream what you want. And when I say dream, I do mean dream. Yeah? A big enough goal that you believe that maybe you want to achieve it. Dream what you want. And the goal mapping process talks you through how to dream about what it is that you really want to achieve in life. The stuff that makes you excited, that gives you a passion. The stuff that you want to get out of bed for. The second step is to figure out what priority your goals are in. Because I don't know about you, but most people I talk to tell me they've got lots of goals. Have you got lots of goals? Not just one thing, but there's a few things that you'd like to achieve in life. And what we do is figure out, well, which is the most important goal? Because when you've got that goal, the rest usually fall into place. The third part is to draw. Draw a picture of what that goal looks like into what was a right brain template. And I'll show you some of those in a moment. And this is the part where most people say, I can't draw. I can't draw at all. I don't want to draw anything. I didn't draw. I've not been drawing since I was 5 years old. Well, that's okay, because you can use symbols and shapes and just use colour, whatever is meaningful for you. The purpose, though, is an impact into the right brain. Okay? The fourth step is to identify why you want to achieve it. And when I say why, I mean the motivating, emotional reasons why you want it. Almost the stuff that makes you cry. More so than just, well, I fancy it, which is okay, but what is the real motivating factor for you wanting that goal? The fifth is when, over what period of time are we talking about? Is it a month, a year, 5 years, whatever it is for you? And the sixth part, is the how. What actions will you take to be able to achieve that goal? the step-by-step actions, week by week, month by month, to take you closer to the goal. And the final part is who is going to help you along the way. You can't do it on your own. I don't think I've ever met anyone yet who's achieved a massive goal and said, I did it on my own. I've never met them. So we're going to identify through the goal mapping process who those people are. And when we put it all together, ladies and gentlemen, you finish up with something that looks maybe a bit like this. There are two templates. The left brain, as you can see, and the right brain. The left brain consists of words, strategies, the bullet point bit, and the right brain consists of the pictures, the imagery that stimulates that into the unconscious mind. I've also brought along with me some other goal maps. Some of these are my personal ones, and others are ones we've used in business. You can come on and have a look at these towards the end. Looks something like that when it's finished. Okay? That's a completed goal map. They reckon in the world, the greatest movers and shakers are the people that know how to use both parts of their brain. Winston Churchill, Adolf Hitler, great war strategists. And when they died, they left a legacy of watercolors. How is that? Einstein, great scientist, very left brain, classical musician, which is very right brain activity. How is that? Professor Lewis Carroll, professor of mathematics at Oxford University, a very left brain subject. Wrote Alice in Wonderland. What's that all about? Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel, and there he is with his paintbrush and his tin of dewlaps, and there he's going along like this. And when his arm got tired, he changed it and carried on with his other arm to exactly the same standard. He could use and switch between both parts of his brain to control his body. And his creativity never waned. How is that? And we could go on and find people throughout history, the great movers and shakers that knew how to use both parts of their brain. I was hooked. Thought, yeah, that's for me. Because I really do want to go on and complete the big swim. And sure enough, July the 3rd, 2010, we got into the River Thames and we finished the swim. Went on from that to do a few more swims. We swam Windermere, we swam in Salford Keys twice, we swam in the Southwest Peninsula just last year, and then just recently, I was fortunate enough to be invited to do one of the world's iconic swims, which is Auckland Harbour in New Zealand. Because when you achieve one goal, guess what? A bigger one comes along. This is on November the 17th this year, which is something I'm training for at the moment. Now here's the interesting thing. It's not about the swimming, for me. I hate it. When I get out of Salford Keys looking like the swamp monster, I tell you what comes out of that water with me, you don't want to know about. And it goes on my living room floor, you know, I hate it. I do not like the cold either. I look a right div in a wetsuit. I'm not a swimmer. I'm the wrong shape. I'm too heavy, I'm the wrong size. I can swim quite a long way, but I don't go very, I'm not a swimmer. So it's not about the swim. It's about who I become in achieving the swim. It's about the changes that are happening to me today to achieve the Auckland swim in November. I'm wetting myself here, because I had a Mars bar today, and I'm thinking, that wasn't a good thing to do, was it? Yeah? I'm in the pool every day for at least 2 hours, building up the legs. We're up at Gaddings, whatever it's called, Gaddings Dam in Todmorden, if any of you live near that area. Yeah, a lot of channel swimmers go up there. It's the highest beach in the UK, did you know that? Todmorden, seriously, it's got the highest beach in the dam up there. They've got a natural beach. And the channel swimmers with a train, they go to Gaddings Dam. Because it's on the moor now, the weekend and get all the chop. Did you guys know what Gaddings Dam?
No.
See me? Our own water swim.
Yeah, from the northeast. We use the North Sea.
Oh well, I'm about to use it. Okay. But you get the idea. When you're having a goal, sometimes it's not about the goal. I think Jimmy alluded to this as well. It's not about the goal. It's about your behaviours and who you become in achieving that goal. It's who I become in achieving my swimmers. I hate the damn stuff. But the behaviour and my attitude is worth it. There was a very famous quote, and you'll be familiar with this. Henry Ford, the great car manufacturer. He's attributed to this quote, but I think it's even older than he is. I think it's about 80 years before him. And he said, if you think you can, you can. Who's heard of this? And if you think you can't, you can't. And either way, you'll... Exactly. When I first heard this, it was strange to me. What do you mean you think you can? Right. And what he's getting at there is if you believe that you can't do something, you will find every single excuse in the book why you shouldn't do it. You're either going to get reasons or you're going to get results. And you get to choose. If you think you can, you will find every reason in the book why you should achieve it. And you will set off with a different kind of plan. And I think he was way ahead of his time. If you think you can, you can. And if you think you can't, you can't. But either way, you'll prove yourself right. What was Henry Ford getting at there?
Master of your own destiny.
Master of your own destiny. That's fantastic. Absolutely. Do you reckon, with that in mind, that Henry Ford was talking about negative thinking or positive thinking? Generally. Positive thinking. Because in order for you to achieve your goals, you're going to have bags of positive thinking. So I'm learning all about this as I'm doing my swim training, and someone said, you're going to have bags of positive thinking. And I was thinking, yeah, okay, I just want to get to the end. That's my positive thinking. Just get me to the end without being fished out of the water. But I went on to learn that, in your brain cell and in my brain cell, everybody's brain cell, there's about a gazillion little things floating around in everyone's head, these little brain cells floating around. And this is a very simple explanation. But microscopes, these big scanners, have shown that this is actually what your brain cell looks like. Yeah? You see them too? Okay, they're lovely, aren't they? And what you have in your brain cell is the centre part, and then there's these sort of dendrite arms that stick out. And what happens is when you have a thought that is positive in nature, it triggers the release of a chemical called serotonin. Chocolate has it. I love the idea that my brain is swimming in cadmiums. I kind of like that idea. But it's very true. So, if you have a thought that's positive in nature, you trigger the release of the chemical serotonin. Serotonin is the happy chemical. It's the kind of the feel-good chemical. And what it does is it goes down the dendrite arm and it's swimming around with all this fluid of serotonin in your brain. And serotonin is also a conductor. It allows an electrical brain trigger to go from the end of one dendrite arm to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And you get that train of thought, that positive thought process. Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever been with a group of people and you've been talking about issues or problems or something like that, and somebody comes up with an idea and immediately someone jumps on it and then you all get a bit of a buzz and then you start contributing and all that stuff. It's like your brains have gone to a party. you ever sort of experienced that? Well, that's what's going on there. So what happens is this brain cell goes yippee-doo. Thinking positive helps me make connections and helps me think better. And this is the kind of thinking and approach you'll need when you're considering your goals. On the other hand, if your thought is negative in its very nature, and you'll have met people like this, if you've got a thought that's negative in nature, you trigger a chemical called cortisol. This young lady went, cortisol is the chemical of depression. It's the chemical that you don't feel so good when you've got lots of this. It's also an inhibitor. It's a blocker. So when you're thinking negative in nature, you trigger that same impulse. The problem is here, your flow of thought has now been affected by negative thinking. There is no synergy of ideas, there is no train of thought. It all becomes really patchy. And you'll find that you infect the people around you. Who's got friends that are the worst people that ever to speak to? Yeah, we've all got them, haven't we? There's a guy that I used to work with, and you go into the office on a Monday morning and go, "Hiya, Sean, did you have a great weekend?" He went, "Oh my goodness me." His name would come up on my phone, Sean calling, and I couldn't take the call. You'd have to make sure that you were in the right frame of mind before you could talk to Sean. I'm sure by Friday he was slitting his wrists. But we've all met people like that who just go through life spewing out negative thoughts and dragging you down with them. And I learned not to associate with them. Okay, they're on my Christmas list, but I am not going out for coffees and drinks and meals and that sort of stuff. Because they do me head in. Okay? I have to make a choice. And the choice is either I finish the swim or I hang out with some very negative people and do nothing. Okay? But setting goals helps you stay positive. It doesn't mean that you can always be positive because you've got a goal. But by heck, when you've got a few more positive thoughts, there's a sense that you're going to be on your way. Do you agree with that? Yeah. Okay. I was talking to some students just recently. We did a workshop, students just before they took their exams. And we talked about this positive thinking. And they were quite positive. Despite the government, they were looking forward to going on to university and aspiring to all sorts of great things. And I was just curious where they learnt this positive thinking from. Because from what I could see from the curriculum, I didn't see next to maths, 40 hours of maths, positive thinking class. I didn't quite understand where we were going to get that from. So we were talking to these young students, and I said to them, how do you learn self-motivation when you're achieving your goals? How do you learn self-confidence? How do you learn self-esteem? Because when you're achieving your goals, you've got to have loads of that. Do you agree? Yeah. So how do you learn it? And they said, well, you sort of kind of learn it as you go through life. It's not something that they teach in schools. Although having said that, I have started working with some year 10s around the subject of touching on goals. So there are some changes happening. But the question was to these young students, how do you learn self-leadership? How do you learn self-motivation so that you can achieve your goals? And I couldn't answer the question. And I said to them, when I work with chief executives, I'm often told that the stuff that they will teach you when you get a job for the first time are the technical skills and the knowledge to do the job. But self-motivation, self-confidence, self-esteem is not something that is taught in companies. Although more and more business leaders are beginning to realise that they need to start teaching that as well. Okay? I want you to consider this for a moment. Imagine that you've got a company and you're going to recruit 5 people for 5 jobs. So you put the advert in the paper and half of Manchester right in. You get 5 that you think, oh, they'll do. But you go through the filtering process and you find 5 people that you'll happily give the work to. So you recruit those 5 people. What statistics have shown is that when you teach them just the technical skills and the knowledge to do the job, remember these 5 people are all more or less the same level, what statistics have shown is that 3 of them will be about average. 1 of them is going to be the rising star of the company, and 1 of them you'll probably end up firing. And the question we have to ask ourselves, and which I ask these students, is why? Why is it that whenever you get about 5 people in a room and you give them the same technical knowledge and the same skills training, 3 of them so-so, 1 of them doesn't make the grade, 1 of them the rising star. Same at Weight Watchers and Slimming World, by the way. I won't ask who goes today. You can give 5 people the same diet sheet. What happens is 3 of them, they lose a pound, gain a pound. One person says, stuff that, I'm off to Weight Watchers. You know? And one person becomes the target member. Those are the statistics. They won't publish them, but they are. It's a kind of the same formula that you can apply to smoking cessation and other groups that have this sort of average of people. We spend a lot of time teaching people technical knowledge and skills training, but we spend less time teaching people how to achieve the goal, the personal leadership. And I believe what is missing is this final third that you'll see in a moment on the screen. It's called the DAC factor. DAC stands for drive, attitude and confidence. Drive, attitude and confidence. The moment you start to show people and lead them to achieve their greatest drive, their biggest attitude, their greatest confidence, they become goal achievers. I'll give you an example. Last year we had the Olympics. Seems a long time ago now. And I reckon those athletes were in the peak of fitness when they went to the starting line for their race. Would you agree? They trained for years, they'd given up chocolate, they did all the right things. And when they got to the starting line, they were in the peak of physical fitness. But I reckon if they had not got high levels of drive, and they'd not got a great attitude, and they were not supremely confident, they would not win the race. I believe that when Wayne Rooney turns up to play for Man U at 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, I believe that he's in physically great shape. But I also believe if he's on a bit of a downer, he's on the losing team. I won't ask you who the Rooney fans are. Yeah? But this is the missing bit, the drive and the attitude and the confidence. Okay? Same thing when you're at work. Who works in an office? Who works in an office, sat down in an office? Okay, so what happens then? You sat at your office desk, working away, the boss comes in, looks over your shoulder at what you're doing. How do you feel?
Well, I actually think she
What happens to the way you work?
I'm affronted.
You're affronted?
Yeah.
Okay. Does your confidence go up? Confidence go down? Stays the same?
Morale goes down.
Morale goes down?
Yeah.
There's a change?
Yeah.
And the moment your boss walks away, maybe morale goes back up.
Goes back up.
Goes back up. Okay? Well, I used to work in an office too. My boss would come and stand over my shoulder and go all fingers and thumbs. And, you know, I'm literally like, oh, neck. You know, you forget how to use the keyboard. It's like, and the moment he walked away, I was thinking, stupid. You know, the moment he walked away, I was fine. What had gone wrong? Had I forgotten how to do my job? Had this lady forgotten how to do her job? No. What had happened is the drive and attitude and confidence and morale had taken a bit of a kick. Okay? So it's really important when you're setting your goals. It's not just all about having the knowledge and having the skills and all the things that I would need to have for my swim and the technical this and the wetsuit. Is it 3mm? Is it 2mm? Is it naked? Or, you know, none of that. What was really important was my personal attitude and confidence as to how I was going to go about doing it. I read a book just recently by a guy called Maxwell Maltz. And the book was called Psycho-Cybernetics, which despite its title was actually quite easy to read. And it was a very small book. And Maxwell Maltz was, has anyone read it by the way? Thank goodness for that, because I skipped a few pages. But anyway, so Maxwell Maltz wrote this book, and he was an American, what they call it, plastic surgeon, and he went on to become, I think he was a psychologist or one of the ologies. And one of the things he noticed, and he wrote about this in his book, was that when people came to see him who'd got horribly disfigured faces, and he was able to give them a new face, they would go away from his clinic and come back sometime later for further consultation, and they were still wearing the scarves. You know, they were still wearing the hats. And what he realised was that he'd healed the scars on the outside, but he'd not dealt with the stuff inside. Not dealt with the confidence inside. You get an idea? And one of the things that he also wrote in his book was that our lives, the way that we lead them, is a bit like a bicycle. And in goal mapping, we call it the bike of ability. And what Maxwell Maltz said was whatever you want to achieve in life is a bit like riding a bike. When you're moving towards a goal, cycling away, you've got stability, yeah? As long as you're moving towards a goal, you're stable. But the moment you slow down and stop, what happens? Who said fall off? Yes, of course. The moment you slow down and stop, you get a bit all wobbly, don't you? And you could actually come off your bike. And Maxwell recognised this, and he said as long as you've got a goal and you're moving towards something, you're going to be stable. And I mean, lots of people, I coach lots of people who say, I don't have goals. So, how do you get out of bed in the morning? You know? How do you haven't got anything that you want to achieve. And what I would encourage people to think about is, because I get that, because not everybody likes goals. Don't think of it in terms of goal. Think of this in terms of your reason why. So scrub goal out of your head. Ignore what Jim said. But think of it in terms of your reason why. The reason you do something. I don't like swimming in water. I don't like the goal, to be honest. But it's my reason why. It's the reason why I dropped 10 stone very quickly. It's the reason why I can swim a few distances that I can now. So Maxwell Maltz recognised that here we are with this sort of bike of ability. And what happens with your bike of ability is your back wheel is all the knowledge and all the skills that you have in life. Because you've got to have that stuff, right? You've got to have your back wheel. But as you're going along towards your goal, what's your front wheel doing?
Steering.
Steering! Who said steering? Top banana. Steering! You decide where you're going to go with all your knowledge and with all your skills. You get the chance to get on with people and steer your way through life, yeah? Towards your goal. But what's really important is who you are being on the journey of your goal. Who you are being. What are your behaviours? What are your beliefs? Drive, attitude, and confidence is the difference that makes the difference. So when you set your goals, and the work that you're doing in the interval around this behaviours and the timeline, drive, attitude, and confidence is the difference that makes the difference. Do you get that? Yeah? And then there's limiting beliefs. And then the NLP lot came along and said, I've got limiting beliefs. I've got limiting beliefs. A trend, I've got limiting beliefs. Yeah? Okay. Limiting beliefs. So we've got tons of drive, attitude, and confidence. Can you see this? There you go. I don't think you can all do. Okay, when I was a kid, I was very fidgety. I couldn't keep still. Surprised I should have run maybe, but I was very fidgety. And my teacher said, stop fidgeting, stand still, put your hands on your head, stand in the corner, and all that kind of stuff. Okay? But when I got excited, I wanted to move around. I wanted to jiggle around. So there I am, 5 years old in school, jiggling around. And the teacher wanted me to keep still and stand in a straight line with everybody else. And then one day, the army helicopter landed on the school plane. I nearly wet myself. I was so excited, and I was running around the school. There's like big, great helicopters coming down the school playing field, and I'm running around, and the teacher said, "Stand still, keep in a straight line, do not move." Detention. And I think I said, "I want to fly it, miss." And she said, "You'll never fly anything like that." What's your flight? She had great foresight. I told my father this story, but rest his soul. He said, "You'll never bloody get in it," he said. Sorry, Dad. Anyway, so my school teacher immediately put in this belief that I wasn't going to be able to do something. And then what happened? Well, then Mum and Dad came along and said, "Nobody in our family are doctors. We don't go to uni, no one in our family is clever enough." It's true. They were very well meaning, but that was the world they lived in. Yeah. College Oh, I got a job, Sainsbury's. Actually, that was posh, it was quick save. Get a job, yeah. Get down the Labour Exchange. Who remembers the Labour Exchange? Yeah, that was my dad as well. Get down the Labour Exchange. So my parents, very well-meaning people, immediately put in this limiting belief. And then, I've got great friends. Not coming out with us, you're not looking like that, look like us, all that, yeah. So my friends also were telling me what I couldn't do. I didn't get picked for the swimming team. I was always the last in the, you got a line of people and the captain's picking. I was never picked. I was always last, picked last at rounders, I could break my heart. They were putting in these these beliefs, things that I just couldn't do. And then, oh my God, I started to work, and the boss would say, well, you're not right for promotion, you've not got enough experience, we can't promote you. No chance, you're not even going to sit on a decent chair, you. Yeah, and so the bosses would come along and would tell me things that I was not going to be able to do. And over a period of time, do you find that that's happened to you and you get kind of boxed in and here you are in the middle? And then one day someone says, how about setting a goal? The only problem is that all you know is to go as far as that belief will take you. And the goal, unfortunately, happens to be there. So what happens is you start to take little baby steps towards your goal. And then you get to this area here. And you start to feel a little bit uncomfortable. Because you're starting to push that boundary of what somebody has taught you will never achieve for a goal. How do you get through this boundary? Sometimes you need a great coach. Sometimes it's a friend. Somebody says, come on, you can do it. Paul, come on, you can do this. Sometimes to get through this barrier requires a tragedy. Yeah? I'm glad the old so-and-so's there. My life's going to change now. Yeah? It can be a tragedy. It could be a divorce. It could be a bereavement. That type of thing where you just think, I'm never doing that again. It can be a tragedy. But this is the uncomfortable bit here when you set your goal. That bit where you get into that boundary because some so-and-so from years back, and Jimmy was talking about this before, where these beliefs come from. Somebody way back has implanted that in you that you couldn't achieve. The interesting thing that this area here is where the most pressure is. Will you agree? And you know something? When plants fall on the ground, and trees fall on the ground, and they get trampled in, and over a few hundred years, they sort of mulch and they dissolve into the ground. And what happens then is they go into turn into peat and coal, and they're under unbelievable pressure. There's no air, so the plants and the trees change, and they become coal and peat, and maybe a diamond. That area over there of intense pressure is where you find your diamonds. Seriously. That moment where you're thinking, I can't do this. I need help, I need someone to pull. That's where you find your diamonds. So I would encourage you when you're setting your goals, sure you're going to take baby steps and life's going to be really good, but then you'll hit that point and you think, oh, flipping heck, I can't do it. That's where you find your diamonds. Get someone to help you pull you through. Get a friend, get a coach, get a mentor. Get someone to help you through that difficult stuff. So, goals, direction, purpose brings us to our goal map. What I'd love to do with you now is just take you through those steps and give you an outline of how we produce the map. Okay? The first stage is to make a list of all the things that you truly desire. We do this using a relaxation process, hypnosis, whatever word name, all that, relax stuff. And we go through a process to ensure that you're perfectly aligned with your goals. Your goals could be anything for you, your business, your family, your social life. It doesn't really make any difference. We do goal maps that are for business, goal maps that are personal, and goal maps that are to do with your social, whatever. Doesn't make, you'll decide what it is. Then we decide the order, or you decide the order that you're going to put those goals in. What is the most important goal? The one that when you achieve it, you get all the others. The next stage, after identifying your main goal, is to map them into the left brain template. To write them down. And then, after that's done, using colour, as much colour as you can, or you can use symbols, we start to colour it in. We motivate the right brain, the unconscious mind, to accept that goal. Then we go into looking at why. What are your main motivating reasons for wanting to achieve that goal? What's the stuff that makes your heart sing? And once you've identified those motivating reasons, you then go on to colour them in. This is the interesting part, I think, the when. Because sometimes people don't like putting a date on things. When is that achievement date? You get to decide. Now, the way that I look at my goals, and particularly my swimming goals, if I don't put a date on my goal map, then 3,000 swimmers will turn up and I won't be there. So I have to have a date that says on November the 17th at 2:30, I will go into the water in Auckland, New Zealand. If I don't have it there, it'll be a bit wishy-washy and a bit, maybe I won't do it. I'm even thinking that as I'm saying that now. But you have to have a date. Because if you haven't got a date, you've got nothing more than a name, and when you aim for something, you can miss it, right? Right. Okay. You also need to put your date you're going to start it. It doesn't have to be Monday morning, it could be January the 1st, the date that you're going to actually start the goal. And then you colour it in. Then you need to pick the hows, the 3 major actions that you need to do in order to achieve that goal. And they're in sequential order, starting from the bottom. And you list those actions. What is it you need to do to achieve the goal? Colour them in. Lots of colour, stimulate the brain. And then we come on to whose help will you need? This is an interesting one because often when people are achieving goals, they'll say to me, well, I'm the only one that can do it, really. It's me. Ah, yes. But what is the characteristic that you will be displaying when you're achieving that goal? Are you going to be focused, for example? If you are right focused, will you be disciplined? What is the characteristic? Maybe it's humour. So don't just write there to me, I'm the only one who can do that bit of the goal. What is the characteristic that you will need to display to achieve the goal? And then it's coloured in. You can also add detail to these goal maps, by the way, so you can make a big goal map. And then you might want to take a section of the goal map, as you can see in the diagram here with the little point on the right-hand side. You might want to take that section and make another goal map, because that becomes your goal. And then you could take another part of the map and make another, and so on and so on. And I find that the goal map actually starts to spread. Once you start one, it's like you kind of go on to the next one. Once all that is done, we'll finish up with the goal map similar to what I showed you earlier, and then I'll show you the goal mapping ritual. Oh yes, you have to sign it. Why do we have to sign a document? Commitment, like a check, yeah? You sign it, both parts of the template, because you're committing yourself to that goal. Then you need to put it somewhere where you can see it. Not stick it in your bag and lose it or whatever. You need to put it somewhere where it's very obvious. And I would suggest the bedroom wall, where you can see it first thing in the morning and last thing at night. By the way, that's when your unconscious mind is at its most powerful, rather than during the day. So you get out of bed and you see the goal map. I've seen goal maps on ceilings. I won't go into detail. There were some very interesting conversations, so I was told. But I've seen them put on bedroom ceilings. You need to see it. Yeah? So you can manage your unconscious mind and overrides any negative thoughts you might have that day around your goal map. Say it, you speak the affirmations. You're verbally commanding your unconscious mind to I am, I will, I am, and so on. You're speaking the positive affirmations in your goal map. And finally, you need to share it. Why do you need to share it? Because commitment, absolutely. Because when you're telling people what's happening, you promise. Want to do it. Absolutely. I feel that this evening I've been accountable for 100 people that I'm going to do a swim in the moment. I'm kind of really embarrassed now. If you go on my Facebook site, you think, you do it. And I'm thinking, exactly, but you're absolutely right. You have to share it with people. And you know the strange thing is when you start to share things, help pops up or you didn't expect it. Somebody will say, do you know what, I can help you with that. Or I can introduce you to somebody who's done that. I'm amazed where I get help from. Not just for anything I do with swim, by the way, in business, all sorts of things pop up. I'm amazed where help comes from. Just by being able to share and say, this is what I'm doing. Okay? If you would like to have a play with the goal mapping templates, then you'll need to make a note of this website. It's liftinternational.com, or you can just Google goal mapping and you'll find it. And then you can go on and you can download some free goal mapping templates that are blank. Okay? You don't just have a play around. Now there is a much bigger process that I'm going to tell you about in a few moments. But if you want some templates, then that's where you need to go and do them. And also you can connect on Facebook with the goal mapping group if you want to have more information and a bit of a chat with people all over the world who've been through this process. Goal mapping is shared in corporate. Here is the Vodafone goal map. The year 2000 they made this. By 2009 they'd have their dream operation. I think they've got a farm now actually. By the way, we do have their permission to show these. I'm not just breaching any confidential things. Young lad James Manford. By the age of 25 he wanted to achieve something in football. With children, they tend to think of it in ages rather than dates. They don't always get dates, so they think of it in terms of how old will you be when you're doing this, whatever it is you want to do. Microsoft, guess what they want to be? Microsoft team, a sales team at Microsoft, they've signed it as you can see, and that hangs in their offices. This is one by Avanta. See how professional you can get? You can really get into this, can't you? Downloading images and stuff, and yeah. And there is that's the front of the goal mapping website. But if you are interested in goal mapping, as I say, you can download the free templates. You can also sign up to stuff as well. It's not my stuff, it's Brian May's stuff. But you can sign up to webinars and you can go have a chat with Brian and all that sort of stuff. Download bits and pieces. So if you are interested, then that's what